Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Today's video is all about growing summer squash and zucchini. Use the timestamps to jump to the parts that you want. I'm really going to cover all aspects of growing in the summer. And let's just start with the zucchini plant. This is a Black Beauty zucchini. This was a transplant. I grew it for about 3 weeks after germination indoors, and it went into the ground, I believe, on May 2nd. Today is June 6th. Your squash and your zucchini are going to mature from germination and be ready to start producing in, as little as 35 days. So 35 to 45 days, your plants from germination or transplant are really going to start producing. What does that mean? And I like to start here. Squash, zucchini plants are often attacked by the vine borer. It's a butterfly or moth that flies in, lays eggs. The larvae crawl down into the stem. They kill out your plant. You also get squash bugs, other insects. One mistake people make is they think they have to plant all their squash and zucchini at the same time. So it all goes in the ground, let's just say May 2nd, or June 2nd or something like that. And then they end up with 6 plants. Way too much squash and zucchini for even a family of 4 or 6 to eat. Creates a haven for insects and bugs to come in. Makes it harder to inspect 6 plants versus 2, and we're going to go over. This one's beautiful, nice dark green leaves. This one's doing pretty good. It's a different variety, a little lighter green leaves. That can be normal based on different types of squash, different types of summer zucchini. But we're going to pretend this one is a little sickly. I'll show you how to perk it up with some water-soluble fertilizer. By only growing 2 plants, 3 plants at a time, I can easily come in and inspect the undersides of the leaves for squash bug eggs. There aren't any on there right now. I can monitor for pests and disease, and it just makes it easier. But for some reason people just think you can only plant these once. At this point, everything's producing, it looks good. This is a great time to find open space in your garden and put in 2 or 3 more seeds, thin it to the strongest plant, and you have waves of squash and zucchini growing through June, July, August, even to September. And what happens is the plants that get hit by the vine borer first or get beat up and die off, they're gone. Don't rescue plants that are beat up, remove them. But then you have the other plants that are coming up, so you get a continuous supply of summer squash, summer zucchini throughout the year. So the first recommendation is not to overplant May 1st, June 1st. Put in a couple of plants. After they get to about this size, they've been growing 45 days, put in some more seeds. 45 days after that, put in some more seeds. You'll get a continuous supply. And what happens is your plants mature and grow through the life cycle of the different insects. For instance, the vine borer is going to come and go. So your early plants are the ones where they lay the eggs. Vine borer gets down there, kills off the plant. But you have other plants up and going. They prefer to lay eggs on mature plants, so the younger plants get left alone. They come into play, produce, while these die off. So you don't want to be rescuing or trying to keep alive plants that just otherwise aren't going to survive. I've been using that strategy for the last 5 years. It's really effective. I also use it for my cucumbers, so if you want to subscribe and follow, I'll be doing this same type of video for growing cucumber plants. I'm just waiting for the cucumbers to mature on the vine, so the video is a little bit more interesting. Next, pollination or brown tips on the zucchini squash. Sometimes people think their plants are suffering from a calcium deficiency, some other issue, when they see a brown tip. This is nice and green. This is a nice size zucchini ready to be picked. This is another zucchini right down there that looks pretty good and is producing nice and green on the tip. Here is another zucchini, still has a flower on it. It's producing. Here's a zucchini that just opened, and that's a zucchini right there with a nice big flower. When the female flower opens, the male flower, these are all male flowers. Notice it's just a stem, just a stem, just a stem, just a stem. So this one is probably not going to get pollinated because the male flowers are not open. You need to have a male flower open up. Again, they just have a single stem here, no zucchini. They have male and female flowers. So you have the male flower, which is going to open soon, and the female flower always has a baby zucchini under it, and it will grow and it will get to about this size. But if it's not pollinated, the tip's going to turn yellow, then it's going to turn brown, and it's going to die off. And we assume that's some sort of nutritional issue or some sort of problem. And it really isn't. So it may have been, here is a male flower right down there. You can see that it's just a stem below the flower. This flower is closing. So it's possible these two opened yesterday at the same time. Maybe that got pollinated. If the pollination doesn't happen, this is what happens. Let's see if I can get in there. That is a zucchini that started to form, and it looked great. And then it started to yellow, brown tip, and die off. And that's because it wasn't pollinated. So the main thing that you're always looking for are male flowers and then female flowers. And I'm looking to see, and here's a better version. That's a female flower that's just starting. See how the stem really is a zucchini? It's thicker. This will actually grow no matter what to about this size, and you could pick it and eat it then if you want. But if it gets pollinated, it's going to continue, and it's going to grow to that size and then to that size. And this is perfect for picking for salads, for sautés. If you let this continue to grow, that's going to triple in size and get even bigger. And sometimes you use that for like zucchini parmesan or for frying it or something like that. But you can start picking it at that size. Let's quickly talk about the difference between summer squash and your winter squash. The summer squash, patty pan type, crook neck, straight neck, your zucchini, they tend to be more tender, thinner skins. You can harvest them at different times, you know, eat them as they're growing, and you just use them in a different way. And they don't store very well. The winter squash, and here's an example, this is my butternut that I just put in, a little peaked, and it's going to get some water-soluble fertilizer. It grows more as a vine. It's going to take 90 to 100 days to mature, depending on the variety of winter squash. Whereas your summer squash is going to get ready, or be ready really, in about 45 days, you know, from germination or from transplant. So I have to trellis the butternut, you know, up my trellis, back down the trellis. Those vines get 8 to 12 feet long. You have acorn squash, butternut squash, spaghetti squash, and delicata. Those are some examples of the winter squash. And they take, again, you know, a good 90, 100 days to get ready, and you can't really eat them until they're fully mature, have all the flavor. You don't really eat them raw. The summer squash you can slice up, you can grill, you can eat raw in salads. So there is a difference, but the main difference is really storage. The winter squash take longer. They're going to store for months on your counter. They can go, you know, 3 months, 6 months pretty easily if stored the right way. So you grow them a little bit differently. Here's my third squash plant. I thought it was going to be a yellow summer squash, but somehow I mislabeled something. This was direct seeded, or maybe the seed pack was wrong. Anyway, it's another green zucchini plant, and it is smaller, and it's a little bit pale. It wasn't getting watered regularly, so you do want to water these even when they're small every other day, even after you get some rain every other day. Couple things to keep in mind, and I'm going to put in the planting hole prep portion of the video at the end. I've already shot that. I use the basic planting hole for cucumbers, for squash, for my tomato plants, and it just shows you how to set up the planting hole, fertilize it, and then you can put in your transplant or you can direct seed. So this was set up direct seeded, and it's struggling. Again, we're going to get to the water-soluble fertilizer. That's all it really needs. But in the way of watering, we tend to water our plants a lot less often than we should. For some reason, we have this fear that we're going to drown the plants. So this guy needs a water-soluble fertilizer, more watering. When a plant is this size, you're going to need to water it still every other day. They create massive root systems. The soil can dry out very quickly when the summer sun is out, 85 degrees, beating down here. They put out surface roots, they put down some deep roots, but you have to keep the soil moist. Once the plant is to about this size, this has not been mulched yet, I had other plants around it, you want to put down about 1 inch of mulch. Keep that moisture in the upper layer. The more you water them, the better they're going to grow. And I would recommend experimenting. Maybe you water, you know, on a set schedule, a couple of plants, water a little bit more often. I can't tell you exactly how often to water because it's going to vary depending on how much rain you get in your area, you know, how hot it is right now. You can see right down there, oh, this one broke off. This is a zucchini that didn't get pollinated, turned yellow, and it died off. Let's see if we have any more examples. Here's one right there that is a dark green right here, starting to lighten up here. This wasn't pollinated either. That's going to die off. And that's okay. This plant is just getting going. And again, we'll hit it with the water-soluble feed, get it watered, we'll see how it goes. Inspecting the undersides of leaves. There's a perfect example of a snail. I use snail and slug baits to control them. Here are a couple of spiders. Those are good insects. You want spiders around. And you want to, you know, start now, really just turning the leaves over and seeing what's around. We're going to take the snail off there because I don't want that eating them, and get rid of that. You want to be inspecting your leaves regularly, at least 3 times a week. When you turn them over and you see these orange clusters of eggs, orange cluster of eggs under here, and they look maybe a little bit bronzy, a little metallic-y. Those are the eggs of the squash bug. So you want to remove them. You can put a piece of tape on there, peel them off. You can just remove the leaf if you want, but you want to get rid of them. They're going to hatch and they're going to just release dozens of squash bugs that will take the sap and nutrients out of your plant. You don't want that to happen. There's no easy way to control the squash bugs. We'll talk a little bit more about that when I show you how I dust and set up a basic treatment to help this plant survive. I don't want to take dust, just real quick, and throw it all over the plant because it's going to kill, you know, the spiders that are right in here. So you don't want to just throw dust all over the place. It'll get into the flowers, it'll kill pollinators, it'll kill good insects. When my plants get to this size, they're just starting to produce. Again, there's mulch down here. I like to put the mulch down, you know, maybe when they're half this size. The quicker you get the mulch down, the better the water stays in there. You don't have to be on like this super tight schedule. Just, you know, practice these principles and the zucchini and squash will do really well. When you get to this size, maybe a little bit smaller, starting to produce, I take a handful of any organic granular fertilizer, as long as it has NP and K represented, and I just, you know, go and sprinkle it around the surface, even all the way up there. You don't really want it sitting on the leaves. So after you sprinkle down the organic granular, and maybe 1 or 2 big handfuls around this plant, and then come in with some water, wash it off the leaves. That's going to supply, you know, a top dressing. You could use compost. If you have a lot of compost, go ahead and use that. What you're doing is you're just putting some added fertilizer nutrition on the top of the soil. That will break down, seep into those surface roots. At this point, when it starts to produce, I like to give it a water-soluble fertilizer. I use AgroThrive. I am affiliated with them. You can find the information in the video description. It's a great organic fertilizer. It really, really works well. And I like it because since I've been bringing my dog in here more, whenever I use fish emulsion, she comes in and she just starts eating the mulch. So I can't really use fish emulsion anymore. And I like AgroThrive better anyway for the blend of the NP and K that's in there. But it doesn't smell like fish emulsion. My dog leaves it alone, so it's perfect. Where the fish may attract, you know, dogs, cats, and other animals to your garden. So this is going to get a drink of the water-soluble fertilizer at this point. And then if you want, I mean, every 40 days or so, 30, 40 days, you can give it a little drink of a water-soluble. But if you set up the hole, the planting hole, like I show you in the video, you know, or something decent, use a top dressing now, a water-soluble now. That's really probably enough nutrition. But sometimes we'd like to, you know, just give them a boost every 30, 40 days while they continue to grow. Remember, this guy's going to die out. Today's only June 6th. This isn't really going to survive through middle of July, late July, definitely not August. So I'm always putting in a new plant. And when I put in a new plant, I set up the planting hole with compost, organic granular, etc. And that's plenty for these plants to really produce. They are super fast producers. At this point in the season, You don't need transplants. If you are going to grow with a transplant, I think it's really important that from germination, that transplant is only in that cup for maybe 3 weeks. Get it acclimated to the sun in that 3rd, 4th week, and then get it into the ground. Keeping a squash zucchini in a small cup beyond 4 weeks from germination really damages, I think, the growth of the plant. In fact, this is direct seeded. At the same time this transplant was put in here, you can see that this plant is bigger. It is a different variety. But this plant very quickly grew to this size and it's starting to produce. As of June, really, once that soil is 60 degrees, it's warm, the warm weather's coming, I recommend just direct seeding. They're going to germinate in as little as 4 days, but 4 to 7 days, they're going to germinate, they're going to accelerate, they're going to take off. And it just saves you time. There's really no reason to grow these, to be honest with you, as transplants. You'll get a little bit savings in time, maybe 2 weeks or so, if you're in a cold area or you want to get things started early. But I would only do that, starting in April, getting your plants out into May. After that, just direct seed all summer long, all the way into August 15th. Because in a lot of zones, and here in Maryland, I'm in zone 7, I will be able to put seeds in April 15th. And I will have squash and zucchini coming, in September over there. From germination, 35, 45 days, you're going to get production out of these plants. Spacing. Now, a zucchini plant, squash plant's going to get really large. This is in a 4-foot by 4-foot raised bed. I have cucumbers growing up here, up the cattle panel, and again, they look really good. I'll be doing a video like this for cucumbers over the next week. I've got some grapes in there. In a 4-foot by 4-foot space, technically speaking, one large zucchini plant, and this is not a vining type, it's going to vine slowly a little bit, but it's mostly bushing, but it is going to creep out to the right, gets really big. So in this space, and I tend to plant things much more closely together, you could really just put in 2 plants, one in the corner there, and then that's another one, maybe that would go in the corner there. That's going to be plenty of space. If I pack in more stuff like I am now, greater chance for bugs and diseases to show up in there. But I just wanted to give you an idea. This plant is really going to take up a good 3 feet by 3 foot space, probably a 4-foot by 4-foot space. Trails slowly, more of a bush type, but I just wanted to give you an idea. They get really big. I like putting them into the corner of the beds so they fall out into the paths. The leaves do get beat up, like for example right here, bringing a hose through and walking through, they get beat up. That's not bug damage, that's damage from the gardener. And it's fine. They can handle, losing some of the leaves. But I want to stress again, the whole goal and the way that I've found that I can have zucchini squash through the summer is just planting them, every 4 weeks or so, 5 weeks throughout my garden, so that as these are maturing and dying off, I've got new plants coming up. All the cool weather crops are coming out of my garden, so this is going to get mulched up. So it's important to mulch. Again, when a plant is about this size, get that mulch down. Keep moisture in there. Without moisture in that top 2, 4, 6, 8 inches, the plant's going to survive, but you want them to thrive. Keeping moisture in the upper, say 6 inches of the soil really helps the plant pull in nutrients. Without water, you can't pull in nutrients. So this guy's looking beat up. I'm going to give it AgroThrive. You can use any water-soluble fertilizer that you want. You can use the chemical types. They don't hurt your plant. They're affordable. I would recommend using them like Miracle Grow, Vigoro, and I think Plant Expert at half strength. You just don't need all that nitrogen. So save money, use the chemical types at half strength. When you can, use compost. The water-soluble fertilizer, AgroThrive is organic. I try and use that, when needed. If it's an emergency, I'll use the chemical types. My point being that if you're using a lot of compost, you have organic matter in your soil, you're really giving the soil what it needs, the microbes what it needs. Occasionally using the chemical fertilizers aren't going to kill worms, it's not going to poison your plants, it's just none of all that stuff you hear online. You want to have organic matter in your garden. It's really important. Your plants can't survive on just earth, no organic matter, and chemical fertilizers. It's just no good. But, that's my piece on the chemical types. And why do I talk about that? Because organic gardening can be expensive, and I want people to have food. I want them to have a garden. I want them to be able to, you know, harvest out of their garden. And sometimes you might want to choose to use the chemical types. Now, amount. This plant is pretty, you know, looking a little beat up to me. So I'm going to water it a little bit differently. We'll go over to the plant that's thriving. I'm going to show you the difference. This is a 2-gallon container. We're going to put about a gallon or so, maybe half a gallon right in there. And with the water solubles, I'm just making a square so that I'm getting it out to the roots that have been moving out. Really soak it in to the middle. You know, if it starts to pool like that, just wait a second. And we're just about to a gallon. And I'm just going to give it a little bit more. And that is plenty. You don't have to worry now about giving this plant nitrogen. That's what we're really trying to do at this point, is giving it more nitrogen, help it green up, help it grow. And this guy should be fine. I'm going to get down the mulch. I'm not going to put down any of the organic granular because I know the planting hole is set up fine. I think it's because I wasn't watering this guy regularly. It's struggling a little bit. But the addition of the water-soluble nitrogen means the plant can use it right away, green up, get growing, and everything will be fine. This plant has been cared for with kind of all the principles I'm talking about. So we put down the organic granular as a top dressing at this point. You can put down compost, and it really doesn't need much. I'm just going to get in right at the base and just give it, you know, 5-10 seconds of the water soluble, and that will just help keep it going. It doesn't need more. Continually feeding and, you know, overdosing the plants with nitrogen, especially the water soluble type, can lead to really green plants, but really kind of lush leaf growth, thinner leaves, and sometimes that attracts the insects because, you know, they just see these beautiful green plants when they're flying by, and they, you know, they fly in and they land on them. A lot of times the insects will come in as you pick a zucchini, squash, you break it, sends out pheromones, the insects find it, they come in. They like to go after plants that are damaged. And when we're harvesting, you know, technically we're damaging the plant. The plant over here, and the pattern on that leaf, you know, the light coloring right there, that could have been from temperature fluctuations or something like that. I'm not going to worry about that. That's not anything to, you know, overly stress yourself out about. This plant looks really good. It's flowering, it's growing. I can see bees and beetles. I'm going to give this a good half a gallon to a gallon, almost like the one that was struggling more. You don't really need that much. I mean, it's hard. It really isn't like you have to give it this much at this time. Plenty of water-soluble fertilizers. So my 3 plants are going to be off, not well. The plant back there is off to a great start. This one's off to a decent start. The third one is not off to a great start. But these plants have all gotten a boost. It's going to help them keep going. It's going to help these guys keep producing, and it's going to get the other one back on track. The next thing to talk about is really spraying. So you're going to be spraying your garden sometimes for pests, sometimes for diseases, and for my squash, zucchini, my winter squash, sometime in July, powdery mildew rolls in. Now, it doesn't matter which spray you select, which antifungal you pick. Most of them work. I'm actually working on an experimental mix right now. It's got milk and baking soda and stuff. After I use it for a year, I'll be doing a video on it. But pick your antifungal. That's really what I think your zucchini are going to need. Pumpkins, melons too, cantaloupe, etc., cucumbers. They're going to need an antifungal because powdery mildew just rolls in. I know that it comes in July, so you want to start spraying, and this is what's important, preventatively, about 2 weeks before it arrives. Once it shows up on your plant, the antifungals can slow it down, stop it, etc., but you really don't want it to get onto your plants. So this is a little bit early for me for the video, but I'm just going to do it to show you, and then I'm actually going to go to the powders for the insect dust, which I don't need to do right now, and then I'm going to rinse everything off. I kind of have a journal set up knowing when I want to put down different chemicals and stuff like that. So for the spray, basic sprayer, this is a 2-gallon sprayer. This is just Home Depot brand. Works really well. I like it. Not expensive, and you know, they last. I've had one going on 3 years now. Sometimes you buy sprayers, they get beat up and they don't work, etc. I would just go for the basic HD ex-Home Depot sprayer. I'm not affiliated with them, I just like them. So when it gets to the leaves, you mix up your spray, and you want a fine mist on the top sides, get down on the stems. The antifungals aren't going to hurt the pollinating insects, the good insects basically. Get the undersides, and you really just want to spend some time just contacting everything on the plant. And I would just go through and spray the top sides, the undersides, the stems, etc. And make sure you get your antifungal on all aspects of the plant. If you're interested in baking soda spray, please, subscribe certainly, but go to my channel, just look up baking soda sprays or look up antifungals. You'll find all kinds of videos with the mix recipes, but generally speaking, 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking soda in 1 gallon of water. So this is a 2-gallon sprayer, so it'd be 2 to 4 tablespoons if you're using 2 gallons. What the antifungals do is they create a inhospitable, situation on the leaves where the fungi don't like it and they don't show up. What does that mean? So your plant leaf has a basic pH level, acidity, alkalinity. Fungus, like how zucchini is naturally, we put on baking soda. Baking soda, let me just make sure I get it right, increases the alkalinity, raises the pH, and it makes it inhospitable to the fungus. If you were going to use a sulfur spray, both of these are organic, sulfur decreases the pH, makes it more acidic, makes it inhospitable for the fungus to be on there. And that's all you're doing, is you're just creating an environment where the fungus don't like to hang out and they're not going to multiply, and that will protect your plants from the powdery mildew, or at least slow the powdery mildew down a lot. Again, by planting in succession or every 45 days, we can plant through the cycles of insects, through the cycles of disease, and then come middle of August, later August, we still have squash and zucchini coming. And then spraying wise, routine, about every 7 to 10 days if you're using baking soda, or I think the sulfur spray that can be washed off in the rain. If it's not raining, every 10 to 14 days. Again, most important, stick to a routine. If you're going to spray every 10 days, spray every 10 days. If you're going to spray every 14 days, spray every 14 days. And you don't have to start spraying June 1st if the fungus and problems don't come until later July. But if you've not done this before, jot down when the diseases and insects show up in a journal, and then this way you can set up a plan for spraying. Now for dusting, any insect dust, be it organic, be it a chemical, kills good and bad insects. So you have to use it in a targeted way. You don't want to cover your plant in dust. I use spinosad. The brand name is Captain Jack's Dead Bug Dust. You can get it in a spray or a dust. I like the dust for beetles. If you have beetles crawling on your cucumber plants, and again, I'm going to be doing this type of video for the cucumbers, I put the dust on the outer leaves, and I put some back there, and then some back there. Cucumber beetles will crawl through this. I wish squash bugs died off easily from dust. They do a little bit, but they're hard to control. Outer leaves, away from the flowers, active beetles will crawl through this. For the vine borer, squash bugs like to come onto the plant from the bottom. They hang out under there. It rained yesterday. We just put down water-soluble fertilizer. I'm spraying. Don't dust and spray and water all at the same time. You want to put dust down when things are a little bit drier, maybe the day after you watered. You're going to get a couple days of no rain. You want the dust to be on the plant, if you're going to leave it on there, for 2 or 3 days. Let the insects run through it. I like leaving dust down at the bottom for the vine borer. That does help manage them. You get less loss that way, but they can come in from different parts of your plant. Notice the dust is away from the flowers. I might even remove this guy, get that flower out of the way. This way there's less chance for the bees and good pollinators to be, impacted by the dust. Dust kills all insects. You have to use it in a strategic way. And this is how I would kind of protect this plant, set it up. For larger plants, the setup is pretty much the same for the dusts. Just want to show you how much I put on the leaf. You don't need to cover the entire leaf. Just something like that. And I would put it, if I had beetles and things that are crawling through here, I would put it on the outside leaves going all the way around. Leave the center open so that you don't have dust there that's going to fall into the flowers. Keep that dust away. For the stem, it's going to look something like that. Just down at the stem, remove any flowers that you feel like you contacted or are too close. and that helps manage the vine borer. Now, sometimes for different uses of dust in my garden, I may put the dust down later in the evening when the pollinators go away, and then come early morning before they really come back, I wash everything off. Active beetles are crawling around at night all over the place, and that's usually enough to kill a lot of them. And maybe you want to do that for 2 or 3 nights, put it on, rinse it off, and that's a better way to protect the good pollinators. However, with my squash, my zucchini, I do keep the dust down at the stem, and when it rains or I have to water or accidentally wash it off, I will reapply it. But make sure everything is dry. And the final thing we're going to get to is just basic watering. I get so many questions on watering, and let's just start with seeds and transplants. When you put a transplant in the ground, it only has that little root ball from the transplant cup. So you really want to be watering that at least every other day, if not every day, just getting it to where the root ball is. Same thing with seeds. If it gets to be hot, that top 2 inches of the soil can dry out really quickly, and it can damage the growth of your transplants. Even if you soak in this entire garden, this entire space with water, or it rains, because the transplant's roots are just kind of bound to that small space, they're not going to be able to access the water. That's why I think direct seeded, when you put seeds in the ground, they catch up really quickly to your transplants, because the transplants, look bigger up top with the green growth, but they still need time for the root systems to spread out and get to the nutrients and all that kind of stuff. When you put seeds in the ground, the roots go crazy and they establish first, and then they really support great green growth. So transplant seeds just about every day for a good 10 days or so to get the plants established. When they're smaller, you can probably get by with every other day, every 3 days. Sometimes you think when the plants are bigger, they don't need that much water. Last night it rained about 1/2 inch. This guy's still going to need water. So I'm going to rinse off the dust real quick. I don't want to be rinsing that into the flowers. And then I'm going to rinse it off the stem. So again, you don't want to be watering you don't want to be putting dust down when you're going to water that day, or you have, rain coming or something like that. This is kind of boring, but I know, and I did a video, that if I turn my hose on, fill a 5-gallon bucket, I put a 1-inch line, a 2-inch line, 2.5 centimeters, 5-centimeter line in there, and I know how long it takes for this hose and this sprayer to give 2 inches of water, which is really about 10 to 12 seconds. I'm going to water the base of this plant at least 2 times a week, 3 times a week with this big soaking. And when it gets hotter, like early June, it's okay. When it gets to later June and July, I'm doing this 3 or 4 times. So that's about 10 or 12 seconds. That's plenty of water to get a nice deep soaking in there. I also like to come in and then water out where the shallow roots are going to go, and give them enough water that you can kind of in your mind seeing the water seep down a good 4 inches or so. And I'm getting all the corners, all the soil. It's going to be competing with the cucumber plant over there, so right in between the shallow roots intersect, I want to get some water in there. Now there's no real deep roots, so you don't have to give it a good 12 seconds like I did in the center of this plant. And to me, this is a pretty good watering. I would get some more back there, for another 5 or 10 seconds. The water allows the plant to pull in nutrients. The summer sun, large plants, quickly dries out that top 2, 4, 6 inches. The deep waterings are usually okay, and they're there, but you want to make sure that you're watering out and around the plant. Let's go over to the other guy. Again, let me just rinse off the dusts. So I'm going to go 10 seconds right at the core, and I want to get that deep soaking. And when a plant's this big, the deep soaking is probably okay. Now some of you are going to be confused. Did he say 2 times for deep soaking, 3 times for deep soaking? How often did you do the shallow watering? Right now I'm doing both. But I just want to give you an idea more on the quantity of water that's going in here. That's a good amount of water. And this plant really needs it, this plant, because it's struggling a little bit. I'm going to 3 times a day. I think I missed a week, or I don't know what happened, but 3 times a week, plenty of water, these plants are going to take off. You can't overwater. I guess you could, but 99% of the time you can't overwater plants that are in earth beds that drain and that are in containers that have holes in them. And then maybe I'll just hit this real quick again. I know the water-soluble fertilizer's getting through there, the plant's getting what it needs, and I can check off the box. Nutrients, water-soluble, watering's back on track. The routine is more important. This is the basic planting hole I use in my garden. You're going to see this in different videos because the basic setup is the same. I'd like to dig the hole about 10 inches deep, 12 inches deep at the most. That's 25 to 30 centimeters deep. You know, 10 inches wide, 25 centimeters wide, something close to that. It doesn't have to be perfect. The whole idea is that you're just digging out a hole, you're prepping the soil. Once you dig it out to the depth, you definitely want to get in, loosen up the bottom. Helps the root system just grow deeper depending on what you're growing. And then you're going to add your basic ingredients. I like the planting hole because if this was a brand new bed, I don't have to amend and spend money taking care of this entire bed. I can just, set it up, put in a planting hole, 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe for 4 tomatoes, or like over there I have cucumbers, 1, 2 for cucumbers. It lets me just focus the resources where they're needed for this year. Nature will take care of the rest of the bed. It's a way to save some money. Filling the hole. Now, if you have tons of compost, you can just go with compost. You're going to fill that at least halfway with the compost. This is my compost. This is made from leaves. It's absolutely beautiful. And generally speaking, I would just put most of that in there, mix it through, put in my plant. But we're going to be in different points in our gardens with what resources we have available. You can use peat moss. The whole idea is that you're giving nutrients to this hole and you're also creating a place where moisture is going to stay. That's really important, like I was saying, for the root systems. Now, you could replace peat moss with coco coir. They both impact the environment and you just have to decide which one you want to use. If you have endless compost, certainly just use compost. But I would fill the hole about halfway with the peat moss or halfway with the compost. If you're using both, a quarter of each or something like that. That is a great addition to really set this hole up. Now, you can go ahead, put in any organic granular fertilizer. This bag is a 27-pound bag that I got on sale years ago for let's just say under $5, which is ridiculous. You want to put in 1 or 2 tablespoons of any organic granular fertilizer. That's a slow release, and then you just want to mix everything through. You're not going to plant directly into that. Slowly add in some soil and just blend it together really well. And then you can kind of backfill in the rest of the soil. You have your basic planting hole set up, and then for the tomato plant or whatever you're growing, I would just come over, dig it out, set it to the depth I went. And remember, the tomato plants are doing, a quarter depth of the entire stem or a third of the depth. You drop in your plant, backfill around there, and then you go ahead and you water it in. In this case, one of the tips is using a water-soluble a water-soluble fertilizer, higher in nitrogen, to get the plant off to a great start. But you're going to water it in, your plant is good to go. You can also do this with seeds. So since this video is going to show up in other places, you could set up the hole just like I showed you, and then if you're putting in cucumber seeds or zucchini seeds, you're going to thin to the strongest zucchini plant. You just drop it in like that. The root systems grow into a great planting hole that's all set up for the plants. Root systems love it. They get really strong and they really add to great growth of your transplants, or seeds in this case. Pruning your squash and zucchini is a little bit misunderstood. Couple things to keep in mind is any damaged leaves, I am just going to get in and going to trim off the leaf. So I like to cut the plant right up here when I'm first just getting started. Cut the top off, remove that leaf, and then I come back in. You can see that it's hollow, so you don't necessarily want to leave a stem around. Once we cut these, it's going to send out the pheromones like I was talking about. So some insects hone in on plants by damage, and it's seeping, and the zucchini smells around. You could at this point use peppermint oil spray. I use that a lot. Mask the scent and that can keep the bad insects from finding the plants. And I do recommend that. I sell peppermint oil, rosemary oil at my seed and garden shop, and I use that a lot for my cucumber plants. So I go in first and I just take the leaves off up here. Any leaf that is down on the bottom, like down here, that's not really getting sun. So you're removing the leaves that are down below. They just don't need to be there. All these upper leaves, 1, 2, 3, back there, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All these leaves that are being hit by the sun, you know, right onto here, also cast shade down there. So you can remove the lower leaves that are down there, like the leaves back there. You can see one's yellowing out over there. You can see another one yellowing out down there. So I go in first and I just remove the tops. Here's another example. We're going to get rid of this one right here. You can see it's there, but this leaf is there. Shading that one, I'm going to remove this. That helps with the airflow. Let me grab that, get it out of the way. And you can see, you know, how big the leaves are. Now, I don't like to do this all at once. I'll do it in stages. Maybe I'll take off, I don't know, 3 to 5 leaves, let them grow more up here, kind of recover. Once I have cleared out the leaves, I will go down and I will cut the stem further back. You want to go back as far as you can, but you don't want to nick the main growing stem and, you know, create an area where insects and stuff can get into the main stem. So at some point you have to leave it like that. For harvesting, grab the zucchini. Let me get it in frame. Give it a twist. And it's going to pop off, and that's ready to go to the kitchen. Here's what this guy looks pruned up. Removed most of the leaves from the bottom and just created the open space. Less leaves down there also mean less hiding spaces for insects, less breeding ground for fungus and problems. And I just want to show you how open it is now in there. Good airflow, great place for the flowers, zucchini to form. When you come up top, just want to show you what I'm talking about. All these leaves, even though this one is above this one, it's still getting sun coming this way. All the leaves that are left on there, that one could probably go soon, are collecting sun. You know, you don't have to remove anything that, you know, when there's a leaf like this over that, you can leave that there for a while. The sun is still getting in there. But this is the general canopy up top here that's collecting all the sunlight right in here. The zucchini seems to be growing this way, so this is the growing tip. And then inside, you can see that it's opened up, again, allowing for the nice airflow. But this is generally how I prune my zucchini plants. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 750,000 subscribers. I'll be doing a complete series on growing tomato plants. They're taking off, they're doing well. Just waiting for some of the tomatoes to form. The key for squash and zucchini is really sticking to a routine. A routine in planting, you know, continue to plant. There's the main ones right over there. I'm going to be putting one in here probably in a couple of weeks. Keep that succession of the squash and zucchini going throughout your garden, because you plant through disease cycles and through pest cycles. I think it's also important to realize, and even though this is, I'm in the middle of clearing out cool weather crops, it's about a ½ inch of rain last night. Don't underwater your plants. A garden wants to thrive. 1 or 2 inches of water a week helps it exist, but we want them to thrive and to really be producing. And for instance, I have a sunflower right there, a grape, cucumbers, 2 zucchini plants. The water is being sucked out of there almost daily when the plants get to size. So just water more often. And then when it comes to your sprays, being on a routine, every 10 to 14 days, keep your sprays going, is more important than what you select as the spray. Again, thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.